everyone. We're going to get started again so that we can keep everybody on time. So right now we're doing a session on apps for everyone. And so we've heard a lot about marketing earlier this afternoon, and right now we're going to talk about how do we reach more people? How do we reach people in other countries who also have iOS devices and could be in our market? Our first speaker is Liz Hedstrom. She created the #3 wedding planning app for iPhone, and she has the #1 wedding app in China. She wrote and designed her app based on her own experiences with planning her own wedding. So I will give it over to Liz.
Is it working? Yep, okay. Hi everyone, I'm Liz Hedstrom, and I'm the creator and developer of Wedding Happy and Wedding Happy Chinese. Let's see. To move forward, I hit the, or can I just do the space bar on here?
Yeah, why don't you use that?
Okay, cool. So, Wedding Happy is an iPhone app that people use to plan their wedding. We build a fully customized and customizable list of everything that the bride or the groom needs to do. And the thing that makes Wedding Happy unique is that I specifically designed it to be useful also for men. As you can see on the left, the icon is not pink. So we have quite a few men using the app as well. And then we have the Chinese version, which we customized. It's actually another app, and it's red and gold for the icon because those are very traditional colors used in Chinese weddings. So, I'm hitting the space bar and it's not moving forward. Anyone know how to move the slide forward? Sorry. Swipe. The black clicker. Okay. So just to give you a little bit of background about why on earth I made a Chinese wedding planning app. My husband and I, we took a trip to Hong Kong in 2011, and while we were there, I was watching people in the subway, and everyone had iPhones. Like literally, every single young adult that I saw had an iPhone. And then coming in and out of the subways was this billboard for this gigantic wedding expo. And so at the time, I was working on the English version, but I kept seeing iPhones and wedding expo billboard. So I was thinking, well, maybe there's a way to do this for Chinese, or for China. And my background is I've been a software engineer, and I was working, before I started Wedding Happy, I was working as a software engineer for HP in their enterprise software division. And so I was very familiar already with internationalizing applications and making them usable for people in other countries. So putting all of that together, that's how I ended up doing the Chinese version. And the next expo, if anyone wants to go to like the largest wedding expo in China, it's in Hong Kong, and it's in March. So let's see. So what we're going to cover today is I'm going to go through some things that you should think about if you're considering localizing your app, some preparations that you should do. We're going to do a quick technical overview, and then I'm going to talk about some points to think about besides the app itself. And okay, before we get too far, I want to just go over a few terms. So for those of you that don't know about this subject matter, there's two words that people get confused about. One is internationalization, and the other is localization. And internationalization is the process of actually getting your app ready to be localized. Most of the work is done by the software engineers. And the trick to it is you want to make your app set up in such a way that when you do go to the next, when you go to the non-native language that you're doing the app in, you want to set up your app so that you don't have to make code changes in order to get to the other language. And then localization is the process of actually transforming the content, translating it, and customizing it so that it's useful and usable to people in another language. And then locale is another important word. So that's basically the language and the region. And there's other stuff in there too, but essentially it's the language and the region. So like in Chinese, there's traditional Chinese and there's simplified Chinese, but the language is going to be Chinese. And it's kind of a little wonky. That's not exactly the case, but more or less. Okay, so before you decide to do any of this, you want to figure out, should I bother, right? Because maybe it's not worth it. And the first thing that you want to think about is your content matter of your app. So if you have an existing app out there, will anybody in another part of the world be interested in this? That's like the first thing. So, maybe you make something that's very specific to the United States, and there might be like a little bit of curiosity interest in it, but it's not really going to be useful and usable. So that would be a case where you probably wouldn't want to, and actually you might want to think about doing a different app because there are so many users in other parts of the world. So let's see. Oh, another thing I want to mention is some subject matters are not allowed in other countries, so you should do a little bit of research. Like, for those of you that know, games aren't allowed in every country, and I think, is it true that Brazil is one of the countries that, does anyone know, that you can't publish games? So like maybe you don't want to do Portuguese. It might not. I'm not sure, but I'm not an expert in every country and what's allowed, but definitely do your homework. And what I'm familiar with is China. So it's pretty much a special case because it's growing so rapidly, and according to Horace Didu, is that how you say his last name, from Asymco, he has predicted that there will be more iOS users in China by 2016 than there are in the US. So it's growing like mad. But again, with China, there's some things to be concerned about, specifically the firewall. So for those of you that don't know, although probably most of us know, the Chinese government monitors all of the outgoing traffic and incoming traffic from within China. So if you're making an app and you want to target the Chinese market, this is definitely going to be something that you want to keep in mind, especially if you have a back end. So that's going to be a big deal. Oops, where's that? Uh-oh, it's going forward and wait, sorry. How do I go back? Uh-oh. I just went through the whole, okay. Shoot, sorry. Yes.
That should work. That's why.
Yeah, this neither remote.
Sorry. Okay. All right. Sorry, everyone.
which slide would you on?
This one. And then, yeah, we'll go from there. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay.
So, with regards to the firewall, here are some of the important sites that are not allowed in China. So if you have an app and you're doing like sign on with Facebook, forget it. You have to change it. You're going to have to use a different way to sign in. Twitter, same thing. YouTube, if you're embedding a cool video at the beginning, you can't do that. A lot of the Google stuff is not allowed in China. Google Drive, Google Docs, Google Plus, stuff like that. So these are considerations. One thing that I did look into for Wedding Happy Chinese is Rackspace. They have a data center in Hong Kong, so that seems to be pretty much, unless you can partner up with somebody and go inside China, that seems to be about the closest that you can get as far as if you want responsiveness. And then what I would recommend you use is Weibo. So we use Weibo for our social media, and I also have embedded it in the app. iOS has integrated Weibo just like they've integrated Facebook and Twitter. So if your user wants to post their status from within the app, like in iOS 6, they have the UI activity view controller. Well, if the user has Weibo installed on their phone, it just automatically works, just like it does with Facebook and Twitter. And it's really popular, obviously. And the Wedding Happy page, we have, I'm not sure if you can see, but we have about 19,000 followers now in China, and I use it. I mean, it's not that bad. I just post photos, and it's fun. Let's see. So some other considerations if you're thinking about going and localizing. Now this is not specific to China. These are not specific. This is not specific to China, just in general. Obviously, you're going to want to look at the cost of what you're going to need to do to your app just to get it ready, the cost of the translations, colors. So this kind of goes back to the content, and like for Wedding Happy Chinese, we made a separate app because we wanted to really tailor it to the Chinese market. Another thing, it's not specific to the firewall, but another consideration is your back-end services. So if you're using something like Yelp or weather data API, if you're going to go to another market, you got to make sure that that's available where you want to launch. So you got to do some preparations and figure this stuff out before you go through all of the work. The biggest thing that I would say, though, and it's similar to what Kat was saying, is tailor your messaging. So with Wedding Happy Chinese, we actually have a different set of tasks than we do for English, because the way that you plan a wedding in China is different from the way you do it in the U.S. Some of the, obviously there's some overlap, but there's stuff that's specific. So, really think about what are the people there, wherever you decide to go, what do they really need? The other thing is in your marketing materials, if you have like pictures of people, use people of the same ethnicity. This is like make it so that it's very easy for whoever they are. Imagine them in another part of the world that they're going to think, oh, this is for me. You want them to know that you made this just for them, not that you just took exactly, what you did here in the U.S. and just plopped it over there. That's, sometimes that works, but in general, tailor it. That's really the biggest thing that I would say, besides figuring out if the content is the right thing. So, bottom line, can you make a cultural fit? And is there a big enough market? So from there, I'm going to go through a quick technical overview. And this is based on my own experience localizing for China. So everything that I'm mentioning, we've been there. First thing is, where do you even change the language in your phone? So it's in the settings app. There's a general area, and then there's an international area, and you can change the language and the region format and the calendar. One thing to note is when you do change the language, your phone will restart. So just be, if you're sitting there and you decide to test it out, your phone's going to reboot. So, and the other thing is make some screenshots or make note of how to get back to English, because it's going to all turn to another language. And you don't want to have to go through every single row to figure out how to get back to English. After a while, you'll memorize it, but make note. And then just a quickly overview, what affects what. So the language, when you change the language, it's going to affect what language the user wants to see their app in. It's also going to affect sorting in lists. So if you're doing any kind of, lists with alphabetical sorting or whatever, if they have a different character set, it's going to sort differently. Another thing, so region format, that will affect numbers, dates, currency, and I believe percentages. So for those of you that don't know, they do numbers differently in other countries. Sometimes they use a space instead of a comma for the thousands, and sometimes they use a comma instead of a decimal point. And so Apple gives us formatters to deal with all of this. So you definitely, that's what you're going to want to be using in your apps if you're going to get them ready, if you're going to internationalize them. Let's see. Another cool thing to work with in iOS is the address book UI framework. So it will customize the addresses for you also. In other countries, they put the postal code first, or they don't have city-state, and this sort of thing. So this is another good framework that you want to look into, especially if you're going to be storing addresses, international addresses. Some other tips that I would recommend is when you are doing it and you're looking through your project and you make a list of all the resources that you need to translate, keep that master list and build your test cases from that list. So that's like your base of how you're going to make sure that this thing works for whatever languages you decide to go into. And then it's not just text. You're going to have to deal with your zip files and storyboards and SQLite and graphics. So this is like another great reason why, if you do graphics, don't put the words in the graphics, because it's just more work to localize them. Do it, embed it, do the background, and then put the text into it with code, that kind of thing. Or use multiple zibs. It's up to you. Another thing that I recommend is with the translation companies, a lot of them will offer, they call it different things like second pass testing or in-context editing. I would go for it. Spend the extra few dollars per word or few cents per word and do that. Because if you're going to bother doing all of this, you want to make sure that the content is good. So, have your translator do the the test once you've loaded up the other language to make sure it looks good and stuff. Because they'll make some tweaks, because they're only going off of your comments in your code, so if it's not perfect. So I would definitely do that. And then another thing is for the ZIBs in iOS 6, if you're targeting iOS 6 now, so if you're making a new app and you're just going to target iOS 6, use the base localization. It's a checkbox in the project settings, and you can read about it. I'm not going to get into it, but it's a new feature in iOS 6. And iOS 5 and older, you can do, there's a couple ways you can do it. You can do multiple ZIBs per language, or you can rig everything up with IB outlets. Some things to think about beyond the app are your app store description and keywords, and a website. So if your website's really important in English, it's probably really important in another language. So you're going to want to figure out how to translate that also. Help files. We have a little help file that we have in Wedding Happy, and we translated that. Press and promotion. I'm not going to talk about that too much because I think Lan is going to talk about that a little bit. And then other things to think about after your app is in the store is dealing with customer support and managing new feature requests. So you're going to kind of have that bandwidth in your team to be able to deal with, and in your project planning and stuff, to be able to deal with customer support requests or feature requests and stuff like that. And then the last point to keep in mind is code maintenance. So the code itself for us it's not that complicated, it's not that hard, it's kind of like a big one-shot deal. But maintaining the code over time, it does take more cycles, and it basically, for us, it doubles our testing time because we have to test for both languages. So we're doing Chinese and English. So if you're going to localize for another country, be ready to do more testing. And then, let's see, I wanted to give you guys some good resources. The WWDC has some great resources. The one in 2010 by Deborah Goldsmith, I think is her name, is really good. I would definitely watch that video. Actually, that was another reason why I even considered it, because when I was at WWDC and I saw it, she was very impressive, and I thought, well, they've got the tools, so let's go for it. And then I've got some other links. And then here's all my contact information. If anybody has any questions, if you decide to get into it, you take the plunge and you get stuck, or you have any questions about Wedding Happy or Wedding Happy Chinese, please feel free to contact me anytime.
We're going to save questions until after. We have another speaker coming up, so we're going to get right into it with Lynn, who has a site called iPhone Localizer and has years of experience of bringing apps to the Asian market. She also brought Wedding Happy to the marketplace. So we'll welcome Lynn, and hopefully it will come up.
Hi, everyone. Liz did a very good job on localization. I'm going to cover Asian markets and the local marketing. Let's first take a look at the market size in Asian countries. we have US number there for comparison. The China market seems like the biggest market in Asia, especially when China Mobile has an agreement with Apple, the number will double. But nearly half of the iPhones in China are jailbroken, and the other half don't have a paying habit. So actually, in Asia, Japan is the biggest iOS market. China market is huge and is getting bigger, but many people don't have the paying habit, just like what I said, and the piracy issue is very serious. So before you move to China, you need to think about it and be well prepared. What kind of app and what kind of models will shine in China? So the first kind is game and entertainment. And the second kind is practical apps. And the third kind is social networking. So the key word is having fun, doing practical things, getting together, or having fun doing practical things together. Free apps will be popular in China. Having in-app purchase and advertisement in app are acceptable. And a low-priced app with pay-to-free time to time is also okay. And the last point is important. So you're offering apps for free before you get the name out. This can prevent piracy. So, the one app we are going to talk about, Pro Camera, has been very successful in Japan, but completely failed in China because we got the brand name out before we lowered the price. So there was huge demand for pirated version. And so now Pro Camera is so famous in China. For every update, we think 1 hour after update, there will be a lot of demands begging for pirated versions. And then there will be pirated versions everywhere. So even though Pro Camera has millions of users in China, Pro Camera didn't earn money from China. China local marketing and effective sources. China local marketing, first, you could localize your app and then do a launch marketing for getting into the visible zone, which means the top 200. And launch marketing, basically, you get everything out at the same time. You do press release, you put user review, and get editor review within very short time frame, and then that can push the app onto the visible zone. And then you could do price drop and pay-to-free promotions. Those promotions will be very welcomed in China for spreading out. And for this kind of promotion, you can partner with many local sources, as many as possible. And then you could do the ranking, maintaining the ranking promotion. You could do targeted promotion. And those basically will be to get very good editor reviews. And each one will get you download peak. And for resources in China, so please pay attention to the order here. Forums, and then Weibo, let's talk about. That's the Chinese version of Twitter. And the Renren or QQ, that's Chinese version of Facebook. I forgot to put one in. That's the equivalent of YouTube. So what you should do is to upload the video your YouTube video, and then you upload to Youku, the Chinese local equivalent for YouTube. And then there's many pay-to-free sites and apps, and then they do price drop as well. If it's a paid app, you could do price drop with them. And then editor reviews are important too. User reviews. User reviews are not so important in China because everyone knows you can pay for it. You can buy a lot of fake user reviews. Yes, that's the fact. And then specific website magazines for giving away promo codes. Those just for small promotions. And press release. Press release doesn't work so well in China because Chinese people, they get the information through different channels, not from press release. China case study, cut the button. It's a game. So step one, we localized the app and we did a launch promotion in China, and we got the app within the top 200. So it's visible. And then the step two, we did a 3 to 5 days pay-to-free campaign. Then this is a worldwide campaign, mainly focusing on China, partnering with local iOS sources. And we got, like after 3 days, we got over 3 million downloads. The developer got really scared, and we were planning to do 5 days, but they turned it off after 3 days. They said it's enough, and the ranking went to the top, and it got many good reviews as well. And then step three, this app basically entered the top club. So we added over 3 million downloads worldwide, and the top rankings and the good reviews to the top of the description. And the app now looked very convincing, and everyone would download it, even though it's a tier 1 99 cents. So the developer really enjoyed a period of paid downloads afterward. And the step 4, the developer added in-app purchase, several in-app purchase, and it did another pay-to-free promotion. And this time, the developer wasn't scared at all. So, and because this time the goal was different. That was for the in-app purchase. And the app reached 5 million downloads. And the developer enjoyed income from in-app purchase. And the step 5 will be to repeat it step 4 time to time. Okay, so cut the button has been on the market for 1 year. And the revenue, so among 5 million downloads, we assume 1 million is a paid download and 4 million free downloads, and 5% of conversion rate to an average 99 cent in-app purchase. The estimated revenue is over $800,000. And this is very conservative numbers because they have more in the purchase, more than 99 cents. And they also have an iPad version has never become free, and that got promoted as well. So we can easily say for the first year, the revenue was over $1 million. And for a lightweight game, this is very, very successful. Japan. Japan market is a very mature, solid, balanced, and predictable, and a fair market. People in Japan has paying habit, and they pay for quality apps. The most marketing methods you used in the US will work very well in Japan. Japan should be the first market to go to in Asian country. So what kind of apps will work well in Japan? First, quality app. And the second, new concept apps. The second one actually is very true. We need to do research on App Store trends quite often. One of the tricks is to go to the Japan App Store and click on each category and see the first one. The top app will always be the new app, very interesting, very fun app. And the third one is a well-localized app. And what kinds of categories will shine in Japan? The first is books, education. The second one is photos and the video. And the third one, health and fitness. And then the business kind. So the keywords are, let's see, the keywords are learning. Let's see. Okay, the keywords are good and new and learning. Japan local marketing. Usually, you could do Japan local marketing in this order. The first is launch marketing for visibility. And the second will be price down promotion for wider exposure. I didn't put pay to free there. Price drop is good enough. And then the third one is the targeted promotions for download peaks. And then the fourth one, support, is very important in Japan. Local support. If you make one user happy, and then that one user will bring a lot of users back to you. Because Japan is a very tight community, and the people watch what other people do, listen to each other. And the sources in Japan, press release work well in Japan, but please use the top firm. Editor reviews are very important in Japan. There are totally 200 sources in Japan. They are only about 10, the biggest one. If you get one of them, and then you will have a huge download peak. You need to have real Japanese editors write reviews in the Japanese style. So basically describe how they use the app in great detail, very long, very detailed editor review. User review are very important in Japan, not like in China, because people will definitely read the user reviews first before they buy. And then social media, Facebook, Twitter, and the local networking site, Mixi, and forums are important too. And then after that is some targeted website. If you have an educational app, you find a parenting site to do that, to get a good editor reviews. The last one, special channel for price drop or pay to free. Those resources sometimes can offer bulk purchase. You could contact them for promotions and for possible bulk purchase. Sometimes they want to buy a lot of gift codes, and then they give away to their members time to time. That's the way they get members. Japan case study, Pro Camera. Pro Camera is a top quality camera app. We basically, we have been working with Pro Camera forever. Pro Camera has tons of very good editor reviews and everything in Japan. Pro Camera has 1 million users, very active users. And the regular price is $2.99, and sometimes the price drops to 99 cents. The total revenue is between 1.5 to 2 million. And Japan, among those 1.5 to 2 million revenue, Japan has 27%. And the home country, Germany, has 25%. US has 25%. So Japan actually is the biggest market for Pro Camera. And the Pro Camera has gotten a total of 60,000 bulk gift purchase from some app communities in Japan. So one day was 25,000 gift purchase. But they bought those gift purchase when Pro Camera was 99 cents, of course. But still, there's a very big bonus for the developers. Tips and the tricks. Number one, so the case study here, the cut button is a Russian company, and the Pro Camera is a German company. We feel like non-US developers, they do more localization than the US developer. So if you haven't done so, please take a look at the numbers of other app stores. If those numbers are small, congratulations. You could, you have a huge potential to get more downloads. And an easy localization trick is to only localize the App Store information, description, text in screenshots, app names maybe, and the keywords, very important. So for the app's name and the keywords, you need to get in when you have an update through iTunes Connect. But for description and for the screenshot, you can replace them anytime you want. So do that, and then they can serve as a test. You can see which country reacts well, and then you localize the app to that country. And the third, high quality localization is very important because the local people, they cannot put up with Google translation. And number 4, use only the effective channels to do the local marketing. For example, user reviews are very important in Japan, but not so important in China. Also, press release and not a good way to promote apps in China. So don't waste money on press release. Number 5, know the limitation of each country. In China, just like what Liz said, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter are usually blocked, and you must switch to local alternatives. Use the local sources. Number 6, know the tricks for each country. For example, in Japan, some pay-to-free sources, they would do bulk purchase for some good quality, famous apps, and then give away to their members. You could contact those sources and maybe have a deal with them. That's it. If you want the slide, you could send me an email, and I will email you the slide. Thank you.
All right, we have one more, really quick one with Brendan. Of Tetris.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, so I'm Brendan Clavin, CTO at Tetris. All disclaimers, we're an app localization company. I'm not here to talk about my service. I'm not here to talk about IB2 or NS localized string. No technical stuff. I just want to give you a sense of the worth of localizing apps and some customer success stories. So, to localize or not to localize, hopefully from Lan's talk and Liz's talk, they've given you some insights into the success and why it is important to go into these markets. But I'm going to just share some data here. This is a report from Distimo from late last year. And what's interesting to note here is that they did an analysis across the top 200 apps across all the different app stores, and these are the results. The most popular language in the top 200 apps in every country is English, except for China, where the most popular language is Chinese. And these are for free downloads for iPhone apps. Now, if we take a look at the same information for revenue, a slightly different picture. China, Japan, and Korea, the top 200 revenue-generating apps in these 3 countries are all native language. The rest of the world, it's English. So what does this tell us? That native language in apps actually boosts downloads and revenue. So I'm going to just share with you here a few customer stories, customers of Tetris, and what they've done with their apps. How many people here can read the app description for this app? I don't see any hands. If I do this, does that help? No. So this is what a screen to a person who does not speak English looks like when they're reading the description about your app in the App Store. See, not one hand went up. This is Harp Pro 3. We localized this a couple of years ago for this company, 3D for Medical in Ireland. And within a week of localizing into these languages, they got into the top 10 in those countries. Another note that I want to share here is that they were then featured in Apple's iPad worldwide TV ad campaign outside of the US. And one of the requirements to be on that was that it was a localized app, because Apple will not showcase in their ads. Even though it's a quick clip within their ads, it needed to be localized. So they were featured in the iPad 1 and iPad 2 TV worldwide ad campaigns because their app was localized. Hit Tennis 2. Mark and Rob, the producers of this app, Focused Apps, are in the audience somewhere. Being fans of localization, they're customers of Tetris as well. This is the Italian version here. Mark told us at a meetup over a year ago that within, I think, 2 days of releasing the Italian version, the the increase in revenues paid for localization. That told me we didn't charge him enough. That's another story. But Mark has this on his website, and he's done some great analysis on his business. And you'll notice here that when he released the app, I guess, towards the 3rd quarter of 2010, Hit Tennis 2 in Japanese, there were a lot of downloads in Japan, and then it sort of drifted off. And then revenue was kind of climbing steadily, but then beginning of November 2010, he localized into Japanese. He saw a huge spike in downloads, and revenue increased accordingly from that. And I think within the first couple of months, his revenue was up like 2.4x because of the localization. Okay, who can tell me the name of this app? No, it's Bunker Buster by Project Zebra. I just point that out because this customer decided to localize the name of the app, which is really important because that kicks into SEO in terms of people searching. So if the app is descriptive of the subject matter, and Mark from Focused Apps will tell you about this, he's localized the name tennis for the different languages that he's in. It might have meant taking one N out in Germany, I think he spelled it with one N, but it makes a difference when people are looking for that subject matter if your name happens to reflect, is localized for that particular market. But I just want to share some data from Bunker Buster. They're an Irish company, came to us and said they wanted to do 18 languages before they ever released the product. And I said, great, but I also told him he was crazy because he should have done his market research. But he had done his market research. This is the downloads across the different app stores for his app. English in the USA is number one, but in Android, if I'm allowed to talk about Android at this conference, he went up number one in South Korea. Not actually number one in apps, but his greatest percentage of downloads is in South Korea, beating the US. And that's because it's localized, and he's done some promotion over there. So the answer to my original question is a resounding yes. It is worthwhile localizing your apps. You should do it. It will increase downloads. It will increase revenue. Thank you.
All right. So we're going to thank all of our speakers because we are out of time. We're not going to do questions right now. I would encourage all of you to find the speakers later at the reception. We're going to set up for the next